Hi, lady. Welcome to your reading. Thank you so much for allowing me to share this with you. Um, a little bit about my process. I don't think I've done a reading for you before, but I like to, as I'm shuffling the cards, my lighting is a little weird. I meditate on your name and I kind of bring your face to mind, and then I simply ask Spirit what message should come through for you. And I like that question because it removes me from the equation, but it also, I think it allows for the message you need right now to be what comes forth. Because I really do think we can ask specific questions, and I always allow people to do that so that I can kind of focus on that question, the question that they have. But I think allowing for what you need to hear to be the forefront is really important. So that's what I do here. I also like to sage my area, and I sage the cards, just kind of clear the energy from everything so that it's nice and ready for you. What I usually tell people is that anytime you get a reading or anything that is more abstract, a little bit intangible, so generally things along the spiritual lines, to take what resonates with you and leave behind what doesn't. And resonation is, it's kind of the comparison of like a guitar string. So when you pluck a guitar string, it vibrates, and then that makes a sound. Resonation is very similar. It's almost as if something in you has been struck and is vibrating and moving. And generally you feel it. And if you don't consciously feel it, you usually notice it in terms of emotions being stirred up, thoughts kind of like, well, but I would encourage you to kind of tune into your body and see if you do start to feel something that is like, well, that felt funny. And if it doesn't resonate, it won't make any motion. It'll just fall flat. And usually what I found is if it doesn't resonate, we don't remember it anyway. So if it's something that is really bugging you and sticking in your mind, then it's probably something that resonated. The caution I would offer you is to carry that with no judgment. So just observing what resonates with you, and then maybe asking some questions like, what should I do with this? Or where is this coming from? Is this real, or is this a fear? I'm sure you've seen The Hunger Games. So in the last, one of my favorite scenes, because I feel very much like Peta in this scene, is in the last movie, and it's after he's been hijacked by the Capitol, and he can't tell fact, like they've implanted memories for him, and so now he doesn't know what's real and what's not. And he asks people, he'll say a statement, and then he'll say real or not real. And I think it's real or not real. Anyway, I think that is a really good question to also ask your higher power, whatever that looks like to you, spirit guides, God, universe, spirit, higher self, whatever name, however you understand that. And just say, I'm feeling this, real or not real? And then trust what comes to mind, because a lot of times the answer is going to come to you and you're going to know, and it's okay to trust that that is the answer, that you've been given an answer. So I also recommend, if you don't already, having some paper and a pen handy right now. You might want to hit pause and go get that. I usually recommend that my folks write down things that strike them through the reading. What you may find is if you review the reading over time, that different things will catch your attention. Also, write down what you interpret, okay? Don't worry about getting me word for word. So let's say you hear me say something and you're like, okay, I gotta write that down. You hit pause. Write down what comes to mind for you, all right? Don't worry about going back and getting my every word and writing that down. That won't serve you as much. What comes to mind for you is the message that you're meant to have. So note that, all right? And the reason that will be helpful is that usually when something sparks and we're like, whoo, we have a thought, if we don't write it down, we'll move on to the next revelation, and then that thought, it's just like sand on the beach, like it just washes away. So one thing I did want to share with you as I was shuffling and I was kind of asking what message should come forth, I thought about a conversation we had a year ago where you and we were just messaging back and forth, and I'm pretty sure it was about a year ago, and you were indicating that you were looking at a move and it would possibly be to this area of the country. And I don't know why, but that came to mind, and I just felt like I needed to share. So, yeah, it's almost like there's just a reminder there that, like, I put a bookmark in that conversation for you, so you can turn back to it and be reminded that it is and or was a chapter for you in what you wanted. Okay. So I'm using the Wildwood Tarot. Sorry, I was just drawing all your cards. Using the Wildwood Tarot here. I love this deck. It is based on the Year of the Wheel, so it's very earth spirituality, and you'll see that in the cards. There's a lot of I hate to use the word paganism, but that's just what it is. Just know I'm not using it with any kind of like negative religious connotation. Just denoting that it is pagan. Earth-based spirituality is paganism. And I've set up the cards here in a Celtic cross setup, and that usually helps me to get the most get a good amount of information. I'm going to go ahead and show you that setup here, just so you can see what it looks like. It's a little bit harder when we're doing video. The cards are just beautiful. This is also my little tarot setup. I have a very sacred space here that I've created for our readings so that it's guarded, and only that which is good gets in, basically. So, okay, so starting at the beginning here, what we've got in the center is you in your current state, which is the Forest Lovers. And this is a Major Arcana card. So there's the Major Arcana and there's the Minor Arcana. Major Arcana, they are usually, you can tell they usually have just a number. And then in this deck, they have a labeling. Most decks, they are a Roman numeral, and then in the traditional tarot, what that is. So the Forest Lovers combine... it corresponds to the Lovers card in traditional tarot. Then there is also the Minor Arcana, which usually will have a 3 of suits of some kind. It's usually, in this deck, it's the suits are arrows, bows, stones, and vessels. And those correspond to the swords, wands, pentacles, and cups in the traditional tarot. So just in case you're wanting to keep track, the nice thing is once you have all these cards, if you want some clarification, you can do some research and then use the traditional tarot correspondent to research more of what that card specifically is saying. I tend to, because I do this intuitively, I tend to sit with the card, and then I also see how they're all playing together, because I do think that is important. So just so you know. So Forest Lovers is the big difference, I should clarify, between major and minor is that minor arcana tends to be a little bit more fleeting, a little bit temporary, still important messages, but the major arcana is very potent, very powerful. So it's it usually just comes through as a stronger sense. And so Forest Lovers, what I think is interesting right now is the thing that sticks out to me about this card is this right here. And I don't know if you can see, but their wrists are bound together around the tree. And it almost is like disabling to their hands at that point. And so there's almost this feeling of connection, and I would say it's outer world right now, but also anything in the outer world reflects the inner world. But there's this sense of like being bound to someone in such a way that it's debilitating. And okay, yeah. Sorry, I like to tune in and see if there's more that needs to come up right now, and there's not. That's the card that's in the place of where you are currently. In the most recent past, it was the Four of Arrows. And it's interesting that the imagery on this card, it corresponds with rest. And I think it's, honestly, for you, I think it's been needing rest, needing deep rest. And almost like a cocoon like rest where you'll emerge as a different person. And then the near future is the Three of Arrows, which is jealousy. And this can come in a variety of forms. I want to say what's coming to mind anyway is that someone or something is going to be moving on and you're not ready for that. So beware of moments where, and it's going to be, of course, it's going to be heart. Like, look at this heart. And this is always the Three of Wands in the traditional tarot, Three of Swords here, or Three of Arrows here. And those arrows and swords are always piercing the heart. And arrows and swords usually correspond to like communication, intellectual connection, that kind of thing. And so I always think it's interesting that it's piercing the heart, because there's this really intense emotional element to this card, even though arrows is not an emotional, vessels is the emotional card. So I think it's kind of this interesting overlap, I suppose, of we are never truly like, these pieces of us are never truly individualized and isolated. Like our mind, our thoughts, our communication, they do have an emotional effect on us. And I think this might be like event induced, so it's not necessarily going to be something that you carry around. It's going to be more of something sparks this to happen, and you suddenly notice this is what's going on. And so I think that's just something to be aware of. There is a card overlaying these three, from the recent past to the present to the near future, and that is the Two of Stones, which is challenge. And this can serve as either a bridge or a barrier. I really think it's a bridge because it's a bridge to get you toward jealousy, which sounds funny, I know, but it's almost like the Forest Lovers and the challenge card are, it's like the different halves of the same coin, right? And so there's this idea of like being being connected at a heart level with someone, but then also like fighting to the death with them, which is what these hairs are doing. And so a lot of conflict, outer conflict, inner conflict. I see it. Um, in the hopes and fears places here, hopes is the king of vessels. That's the heron. Beautiful, stately bird. There's this sense that you really hope to. So the vessels, that's the emotional component here. And the heron is a very graceful, very beautiful bird. Like I'm sure you've seen one. They're very like, graceful is just the only word that comes to mind. And then when they take off, there's just this like really interesting, beautiful power to them. And I think one of your hopes through this situation is that you will handle the emotional side of things with that level of grace, that you will be able to, that you'll be able to hold your head high, that you'll be able to navigate rough waters, that you will have all the appearances of grace and stability and empowerment. That's a hope for you, and there's nothing wrong with having that hope. That's not a criticism. Okay. In the fear place, we have 3 of stones, which is symbolizes creativity here. What I get the sense from this girl is that I actually feel a deep sense of fear in this. There's almost like this feeling that she's melting away and must cling to the rock to be able to survive. And have a sense that that is a fear for you, that if you don't have some kind of sturdy foundation, and I don't know if you can see, but even her hands like are gripping the rock. And it's almost like wind is blowing and she's just like trying to keep herself out of that wind. And so it's interesting, your hope and your fear. It's like, again, 2 sides of the same coin. Like on one hand, you're hoping to just like be able to like delicately traverse the emotional landscape with grace. And on the other hand, you're afraid of being swept away by it. A couple factors at play here. 2 of arrows, injustice. I would say that what's coming to mind is that you're not wrong. There is a great sense of injustice that's happening. And if you can see what's being weighed out up here, it's like a feather versus gold, and then they're like weighing the same. And there's almost this sense of like, I've given this amount and only gotten this amount, and how deeply unfair is that? And I would just want to validate that is that does seem to be what's happening, and just know that you are seen and heard when it comes to that. Another factor at play here is the 9 of stones. You can see this is called tradition. And immediately when I laid this card, I got this voice that was like, but this is the way it's always been done. This is the way it's always been done. And I think there's an invitation here for you to really shed the pressure that you carry to honor tradition, whatever that means for you, whether that's like traditional commitments, traditional methodology, the traditional path you've been on, like even a day-to-day tradition where you're like, but I do this every morning, really questioning the traditions that you carry, both like on the minute level, but also on the major level, like, are you married to the idea that you have to have Easter at your mom's house every year, and if it doesn't happen, then it's greatly upsetting to you? No, like something like that. Like that would be a bigger level tradition. And then, like I said, on the more smaller scale, how, like what are some things you do every day that you really have to do every day? Like you've told yourself you have to do them. Do you have to do them? Are they things that like could you try something different? Could you restructure things? Um, could you allow for new traditions to come in, and specifically ones that honor you? To be honest, I think you've been so focused on the traditions of your family um, or or whatever it looks like, and really you need some things to honor you, like um, taking for some people taking a bath every week is a healthy self-care tradition, or I like to wash my face every morning and every night before I go to bed, and it's kind of this feeling of like awakening my face and then like washing the day from my face. And so it's very energetically like stimulating and soothing to me at the same time. That's a daily tradition that I hold, that's centered around taking care of myself. And so, what traditions can you introduce that would bring value to your life? I know a lot of times in self care, a lot of the dialogue that goes around is like kind of what I call frou frou self care. Like getting a pedicure is, I mean, if you're on your feet every day, all day, and like really taking care of your feet is like something that like you feel valued doing that, by all means, it's self care. But self care is so much deeper than that. It's really about recognizing what your body and yourself, capital S, need on a regular basis, and then giving it to yourself. Women, especially in this culture, we have been taught not to do that. We've been taught that selflessness is the ideal. And I personally think that that word selfless is disgusting. I don't think anyone should be selfless, because we were sent to this earth in these bodies, which means we are responsible for caring for them, and for these beings. I've come to see myself as a visitor to the personhood of Christy McNabb, and that it's my job to take care of her and to love her and to make sure that um, she gets to the places she needs to go, and that she learns the things she needs to learn. Um, and so I think there's something really important about seeing ourselves as that. Like we are a vessel that we came to inhabit, and that vessel needs specific treatments. It needs specific levels of care. And so, coming back to this tradition thing, it's like, how can you use the idea of tradition in your favor? So instead of using it as kind of like cracking the whip on yourself or on others, how can you use it in a way that's life giving, in a way that brings value to your life and your situation? And it may seem very small, but I really think that changing even one or two daily traditions is going to create this ripple effect, and it's going to set you ultimately on a different path. So if you're feeling like you're in a rut, if you're feeling like things are stuck and you don't know where to go next, start very small. Start very, very small. Add tea to breakfast, or have your lunch outside. Maybe go for a 10-minute walk on your lunch break. Like, I don't know, something that resonates with you. And I have a feeling, even as I'm saying all this, ideas are coming to mind. So if you want to hit pause right now, highly recommend it. Jot some of those things down before they disappear. Okay. A big ally here is Grandmother Moon, the moon on the water, and your connection with her and her creation. Um, it may seem a little bit strange, but I think it would be really a really helpful thing if you were to develop some traditions around the moon. So having a new moon tradition and a full moon tradition, those are generally the ways that we honor the moon. And And those can be very simple. Like new moon tends to be low energy, and so new moon can be very simply like take a bath, light some candles, drink tea, um, set some healthy intentions for the next, or some planting seeds is usually kind of the concept of the new moon. So you plant some seeds and you allow the moon to help nurture those things. Full moon is generally a good time of reflection. Um, so doing some tarot at that point is really helpful if you want to get your own cards. And it's a good time to recognize what is ready to be harvested, what has been growing. I actually keep a journal. I do a tarot spread both on the new moon and the full moon, and I have a special journal for that I just keep near my cards. And so it's kind of interesting to go back and see like what was I processing at the new moon, what was I processing at the last full moon, and that's a really good place of reflection, just to honestly give ourselves credit for how far we've come. I think that's a really important piece that we tend to miss, is acknowledging that we have progressed on the journey. So, something to think about. And you can always Google like moon traditions, or if you have any like, hey, I'd like some more resources on that, please feel free to reach out to me, and I'll be happy to share with you things that I use. So the card that's in the place of resolution for all this is the Eight of Stones, which is skill. And what's very fascinating to me about this card is that this man is crafting all the tools that he's going to need on a daily basis. And so obviously everything on this side that was like hopes, fears, all that stuff, it's a very turbulent space that you're in, and may continue to be in for a bit. One of the things that this is showing is that a resolution for you, something that you can help to ground you through this period, because this chick that looks like she's like melting into the forest and being afraid of being blown away by the wind, it's going to be very important to ground. And I think that's why she's clasping onto the rock. She really understands, like, I need to ground, but it's not quite yet in the way that's going to be helpful to her. And one of the ways that's going to be helpful to you is to start focusing on the skills you need to move forward. And you may not know quite what those are, and so it's okay to ask, what skills do I need? But heed your intuition on this, okay? If you see an advertisement for computer coding and you see it 3 times, and every time it catches your eye and sparks your interest, and you're like, and then you go, no, and then you see it again, pay attention to that. There's a reason, okay? And that may be very well a skill set that you need. And obviously, balancing out finances and all of that, but I will say the investments you make in this area will serve you well over time. And so don't be afraid to make them, basically. They are going to be what gets you through inevitably and moves you forward. I just get this feeling that you feel so very stuck and want desperately to be moving forward. And this is a thing that will help you move forward, is to continue developing your skill sets. If you get invited to join Toastmasters, which is like a speech, they learn how to make speeches and like to do public speaking, like do it. It's public speaking is like, oh, I don't think I'm very good at that. Like, go do it. Let that be a skill set you gain. If it's like networking or a class on how to write young adult fiction, or something that improves typing skills. I don't know. Like, there's all kinds of skills that we can develop, and I think now is the time to stop turning those opportunities away. And even if they don't feel relevant to the current job that you have, take them. Don't worry about what other people are going to think. Don't worry about justifying or explaining yourself. If you feel like you need to say something, just say, I was curious about it. Let that be the end of the story. Curiosity is okay. It's really okay. And you don't need to know the bigger picture yet to be gathering your tools. Like, he may not even understand that what he's going to have to do is kill a buffalo in order to eat. Okay? And that in order to do that, he's going to have to string something to a wood stick and blah, blah, blah. So, but he created a flint head anyway, right? You don't necessarily know what the tools are going to be for, but it's important to pick them up and craft them anyway. And you're very much involved in this process. That's why I love that this guy is like, it's also going to feel maybe a little bit isolating. He is alone in a cave currently working on this. So it may feel a little bit like you're on your own trying to figure this out. You're not. Although I will say that sometimes tucking yourself away and working on yourself is the best way to nurture and release what needs to be cared for. So it's not necessarily a bad thing if you find yourself kind of isolated a little bit in a cave. And I don't mean like you don't have a support network. That's not what I mean. I don't mean like reject your support network or anything like that. But just you have kind of that feeling of like, I'm the only one looking out for me right now. Like, that's going to be pretty normal. I got a sense at the beginning that I should draw 3 more cards for you. And so, because I think that really this didn't feel probably very encouraging to you. And so, okay. So we have the 6 of Arrows, which is transition. The Pole Star, which is number 17 in the Major Arcana. Very strong message here. And the Ace of Stones, the foundation of life. Okay, so the sense I immediately got here is that you are in a time of great transition. This feels very bleak at first if you look at everything before the boat and around the boat. But if you look behind the boat, all the way there in the corner, right? Sorry, right over here. The sun is rising, okay? So you're definitely, most certainly in a time of transition, but it's not hopeless, even if it feels bleak. The Pole Star, I love this. All right. You're being guided, my love. Okay? And what I really love about this is that the star is up here and it is providing guidance. It is providing direction and light. But the little guy in here, he's like underneath this canopy of trees and he's like, feels lost. Like, I don't know where I'm going. The beauty is that the path is being laid out before him and it's being illuminated by the pole star. So even in times when you don't feel that you know where you're going, as long as you keep moving, you're going to be led. Okay? This is going to take some deep, deep trust for you. And trust me when I say I understand completely where you're coming from. So don't feel that you are alone in that journey. We are all responsible for building deeper trust in the forces that guide us and letting go of the things that keep us from that trust. And then the foundation of life, I think this is just a sweet reminder that you are grounded, even when you don't feel like it. And you're grounded by a force greater than you, and you're not going to be swept away in the heartbreak or the jealousy or the negative emotions that you're afraid of. In fact, it's okay because you are grounded. It's okay to feel those things and to let them flow through you. Instead of the wind and the waves like buffering you around, you can let it flow through you and out of you. And that was the best. That's the way to move through it, move forward. So instead of fearing the emotions, give yourself some time and space to feel them. And even if that means like you request that your house be empty on a Monday night so that you can just grieve openly, do it. Okay? Do it. I'm telling you, it will be so much better for you if you let yourself feel all the things. Because the beauty of that, if you think about like what water and wind both do to rock, they carve through it and they soften it and they shape it. And grief has the power to do that for us. I don't wish grief on people, but I do believe that grief gives us a gift in shaping and molding us into more beautiful, empathetic, compassionate people. And understanding that the empathy and compassion goes toward ourselves first. Um, I think that's just rule number one for you right now is take care of self first. And you are going through a tremendous change and upheaval, and you need to be whole and intact. Okay? Yes, people around you need you, but they will not be getting what they need if you are not a whole person. So rule number one is take care of self first. And that's going to be really uncomfortable because you're going to have to say no to people that you really love and care about in order to take care of yourself first. And you're going to go, that's selfish. It's not. It's not. It is self first. Okay? And that's very important, because nothing and no one that you care for, if you are not a whole person, will be getting 100%. They'll not be getting the fullness of your care anyway. And then you will not be getting the fullness of your care. And in the end, everyone will be losing a little bit, and maybe a lot of it. So self first. And then as you branch out and let that ripple out, really consider who it is you want to be caring for and what you really care about that should be getting your energy. You are not a limitless being. You do have energy limitations. I should say this: you are a limitless being in the scope of our souls and consciousness and all of that. But in terms of energy, you have a budget, okay? And you want to make sure you're not going over budget, because when you are, when you do, then it's compromising the whole system. Okay, so keep that in mind, that you really want to take care of yourself first, and then note who it is in your community or your family that you want to care for beyond that. Okay. Okay, so that concludes your reading. Thank you so much for letting me share. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, please feel free to message me. I will give the disclaimer that I may not have an answer for you. So if it's something that's very personal, like I don't understand what this message meant, that may be something to take into your prayer and meditation time. But if you just had a question about like, oh, what was that resource or that whatever, blah, 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 I'm always happy to share. One resource I've been sharing a lot lately, and I will share with you as well, is the book, The Alchemist, Paul Coelho. Brilliant read. I think an important read for you, though what I would recommend is maybe picking it up now and waiting for it to call to you, okay? Because it's a very, very powerful message, and I think you need to be ready for it. And that's not to say that you couldn't handle it, but I think that right now may not be the exact moment as you're trying to navigate all this grief and stuff. And at the same time, I may be completely wrong. You may look at it and at the store and just be like, I'm going to sit here and read this right now all day. And it may be the right exact timing for you. So if this reading served you at all, I would love to do a reading for any friend or family member that you think would appreciate it. Please feel free to send them my way. I am offering currently a $5 credit to any of my current clients who refer new clients to me, and then those new clients book a session. So would love to have anyone that you think would be interested in a reading and could benefit from a message as well. So thank you so much. I look forward to talking with you soon. Blessings.